Joining me now to talk about mental health in children is Matthew Fernandez, a school-based therapist in the Monrovia Unified School District. Thanks for being part of our discussion about mental health today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's an awesome opportunity to be here.
Well, we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. And students were really impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, constantly adjusting to distance learning and basically being stuck at home. What were the biggest mental health struggles that you saw in your students when the pandemic began?
Yeah, totally. There was such an impact on so many students of so many different age groups. And some of the biggest impacts you could see was just isolation. The isolation causing a lot of more stress, a lot more depression, depressive symptoms, and even just the traumatic experience of everything kind of closing down.
And now, over a year later, as students have the option to go back into their classrooms, what are the issues that are arising?
A lot of the issues coming up are some hesitancy as far as parents wanting their kids to go back to school and be involved in in-person learning again. There's so many, so much apprehension and the barriers that are there too, scheduling, how it's working with classrooms, and some are very excited, but it's definitely, you can see there's two sides. There's those that are very excited to be back, but those that are a little bit hesitant and a little anxious to go back. It's been over a year. It's been very tough for a lot of these students. So you can see that as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting dichotomy. I imagine that you're dealing with so many mixed emotions. A lot of parents are concerned. They don't know how other parents are managing their children who are not vaccinated yet. So the concerns are valid and real. Can you
Yes.
explain how school-based therapy works? And do students make the appointment themselves, or do you also get teachers who asked for crisis intervention on behalf of their students?
Students can request services. Some of them don't know that services are available, so it's important to really provide that information for students and let them know that there's services out there, that they can find help, reach out. The teachers can also make referrals. They can also reach out to parents. Parents can request services. So there's a lot of different ways to be kind of like funneled into services and connected. However, there's also some barriers too. And I think a lot of it has to do with lack of knowledge. And it can happen where there's a crisis, and sometimes the teachers or the school staff is wanting to reach out and say, we need help with the student. Can somebody reach out, a therapist or a counselor? So it really just depends, but there is a process, a referral process that typically happens that's made, and then we process that and reach out to the family and then try and start meeting with the student as soon as we can.
Overall, what are some of the more common reasons that teenagers seek help for mental health?
Yeah, there can be a lot of different things that cause or lead somebody to want to go and receive services. Sometimes it's just having somebody to talk to, wanting somebody to listen. Sometimes it's feelings of being alone or loneliness. There's isolation, and there's just even like everyday things that come up that students want to talk about and work through in their, problem solving and some of the life issues that come up and present themselves. But there's also other things that are even more noticeable, and those are things like depression, anxiety, maybe some past trauma from something that might have happened before they had come into services.
What are the warning signs of mental illness amongst teenagers that parents can look for?
Yeah, I would definitely say some of the biggest ones are just lack of ability to experience pleasure in events or activities that used to be fun, or excessive tiredness, sleeping excessively, or even not sleeping, so insomnia, lack of appetite, isolation, even thoughts of suicide, thoughts of death, inappropriate feelings of guilt, feeling like everything is their fault, feeling like they could they're just like really isolated and alone. Even changes in their behaviors, maybe some irritability, anger outbursts. You can look for different things like that Stress, panic attacks can happen as well, with anxiety just kind of continuing to build up. And so different things like that, maybe a decline in academic progress, that they were maybe a good student, now they're not anymore, they're falling behind. Staying, again, like I said, isolating, not wanting to engage with people like they used to, or silence, being really quiet and to themselves and not really interacting very much. Those are some really typical signs that we look for, or symptoms, when we're looking into assessing, students or people that maybe need some assistance with therapy.
What can parents and family members do to really support well-being and well-adjusted kids and making sure their mental health is where it needs to be right now?
I would say one of the biggest things is check in with your kids and just ask genuinely, how are you doing? Letting them know that there's an open door policy in the home, that they can reach out to them, to the parents, about anything and everything, that there's nothing that's off limits in terms of just if it's something that they're going through in life, just a basic issue or something really heavy. So parents just validating their children's feelings, their teenagers' feelings. And I mean, that there's just a lot of different emotional roller coasters that go on through the teenage years as well. Letting them know that they're there and that they can also reach out to other people, and including just knowledge is power. Telling students or your kids that if they know somebody that they trust, that they can talk to or reach out to as well, a family member, a friend, a teacher, somebody else that maybe is a mentor, and then also emphasizing they can reach out to their parents too, and really just give them that space so that if they need to, because there are times where they will reach out, they can reach out to them and feel comfortable about it and not have a sense of like judgment or, shame. Because I think that's a lot of what happens sometimes with mental health, is it's seen as, if you struggle with mental illness or a mental health issue, a lot of people are really, they have a difficult time communicating and talking about it.
Thank you so much for the really critical work that you are doing for our young people and for joining us in Focus SoCal today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.